Hey guys, welcome back to the show. Today's episode is a deep dive into footwear, which seems like an odd topic for a longevity podcast, but once you listen to this interview, you will understand why I chose to do this episode. And it has to do with something that I myself have been using for a few months and can't seem to get off my feet. So we're going to get into that in a moment. In the meantime, I want to thank you for being here and encourage you to leave us a review on whatever platform you're listening to this podcast on, assuming, of course, that you enjoy the episode, because, of course, those reviews is how we rise up in the rankings, which, by the way, thanks to you guys and to all our new listeners, the Longevity Podcast has actually been ranking in the top 5 in nutrition and top 25 in the health and fitness categories for the last couple of months, which is a huge accomplishment. We've blown through 1 million downloads. Like, it's been a really exciting time. And honestly, guys, it's all thanks to you. So thank you for your support, for your comments, and for all the things. And if you want to connect with me, at Natalie Nidham on Instagram is the place to do it, or go to natnidham.com and sign up for my newsletter. Okay, let's talk about the episode. Have you ever considered the importance of your feet in maintaining overall health and well-being? In this episode, I chat with Mark Sisson, founder of Peluva Footwear. And yes, he's the guy that founded Primal Kitchen. We talk about the importance of functional movement and the impact on footwear on our health. He shares his experience of how traditional running shoes led to injuries in him. He was a big runner. And Mark explains the concept of ground feel, toe articulation, toe splay, and how these factors are essential for optimal foot health. So our conversation focuses on the importance of foot health, the negative effects of wearing restrictive shoes. And I'm going to take this opportunity to share with you guys, I think I did an episode also, I have been wearing Peluva shoes now since the month of April, and they have been a complete game changer for me. And it's gotten to the point where I have trouble taking them off. So I've worn them to the gym. I wear them around the house. I wear them to walk my dog. I even wore them to present at a conference once. These things are unbelievable, and they actually destroyed my knee pain. So I really recommend you consider them. So Mark Sisson, as many of you probably know, is a New York Times bestselling author and former endurance athlete. He's been researching ways to achieve optimal health and fitness for almost 40 years. He's honestly one of my early heroes in this space. He's the co-founder of Primal Kitchen. And in 2021, driven by his obsession with shoes and foot health, he joined with his son to start Peluva, creating these minimalist shoes that encourage walking as the single best form of movement for health. So if you want to pick up a pair for yourself, and they look a little funny at first, I'm not going to lie, but you get used to them. And once you get used to wearing them, you literally don't even care. You never want to take them off. And to me now, they're just the best looking shoes I own. So you can use code longevity when you're shopping at peluva.com/longevity. So that's Peluva shoes. The website's peluva.com/longevity, and you get to save. Okay. And now let's jump into that episode. Hey folks, just a quick reminder that all of the information presented in this podcast is for information purposes only. No medical advice, no diagnosing, no treatments suggested here. Before you try anything that you hear about or learn about here, make sure that you check with your medical provider. Welcome to the show, Mark Sisson. It is truly an honor to have you here.
My pleasure to be here, Nat.
Yeah, well, this is... between you and I interviewed JJ Virgin not that long ago. I'm like, man, I'm moving up the ranks, man. I'm getting to the goats, the people that started this whole thing way back when I wasn't even in the business. So let me start by thanking you for all the work that you do and for creating the only salad dressings that I will buy in a store. I usually make my own, but if I have to cheat.
I mean, I made my own for 20 years and then I got tired of it. So
yeah, I know. I mean, I still do, but every once in a while you're just like,
sure.
So anyway, so we're gathered here today. I mean, what really sparked this interview was your latest venture, which anybody who's followed you over the years makes perfect sense, right? When we talk about the grok, was it the grok squat? Mm-hmm. The ability, when you were talking about, our people's ability to move in a functional way and how that impacts your health and every, we talk about fitness, but it's about, bottom line, it's about functional movement. And you've now moved into this space of footwear, which is foundational to how
Yeah.
we move. So do you want to talk a little bit about why you did this? And I'm
Sure.
super glad you did personally. We'll get into that later.
Yeah. I was I was an athlete in my teens and 20s and into my 30s. I was a runner, a distance runner primarily. I put in a lot of miles. Initially, when I started running in the 1960s, there were only what we would call now minimalist shoes. There were only Chuck Taylors, and eventually there was a Onitsuka Tiger, which was a shoe that Phil Knight first brought in before he founded Nike. And these were very thin shoes, which limited the amount of miles you could run for a couple of reasons. Number one, they were thin and they didn't have a lot of cushion, so you felt the ground underneath. And it was either your feet or your calves or your Achilles tendons that told you that's enough running for this week.
Yeah.
And for a lot of people, that was 40 or 50 miles a week. This is for people who were, top runners in those days. It was the shoes that sort of prevented you from putting in what we would call ungodly amounts of mileage,
Yeah.
which had effects on the rest of the body as well as the kinetic chain. But I digress. So in the early 70s, I was an adopter. I was a Nike sponsored athlete. I got free shoes. It was amazing. They sent out these new waffle trainers and these new LDV cushioned, thick, wide-soled shoes. They were wide on the bottom. They were flared on the actual sole was flared. And lo and behold, I could go from 40, 50 miles a week to 80, 90, 100, 120 miles a week of running. And you think, well, that sounds like a good thing. But what happened was I got injured. I got a knee problem early on. Had to sit a season out with what we call chondromalacia, which is the patella. Yeah, the patella is not tracking appropriately. And I was one of the first miracle cures with orthotics. And I thought, okay, that's the answer, orthotics. So between wearing the thick shoes and wearing orthotics, I extracted another couple of years from my running career to the point that I finished fifth in the U.S. National Marathon Championships in 1980, qualified for the Olympic trials. I was a decent marathoner, but I had to retire, ultimately not because of the knee, but because of a hip problem that I am certain arose because I bypassed all of the information coming into the bottoms of my feet with cushioned, thick soles. I then, because I put a shim under my arches, which alleviated the knee problem, all it did was push all of the problems up the kinetic chain to the hip. So I retired from competing. I retired from elite marathoning. I went on to do Ironman a couple of times. I was a triathlete for a few years. I could still run quite well. I just couldn't run 120 miles a week. Yeah. I could run maybe 20 or 30 miles a week. So, but at the end of another couple of years of intense competition, I just said, look, this is, I'm beating myself up. I'm not making any money. I need to get on with the rest of my life. I'm very interested in general health and wellness and well-being and anti-aging. So I hung up my shoes. I started writing and researching about ways in which we can become strong and lean and fit and happy and healthy and productive without the pain, suffering, sacrifice, stupid diets, and all the other things that people think they need to undergo to be healthy and strong. And that led me down a long career path of researching and ultimately writing the Primal Blueprint and publishing Mark's Daily Apple, which became really the go-to source for ancestral living for the last, it's been 18 years now since I first published Mark's Daily Apple.
Wow.
And over the years, as I got into the lifestyle of what it would look like to be healthy and fit at the same time, because mind you, when I was a runner, I was very fit. I was performance fit, but I was not healthy. I weighed 30 pounds less than I weigh now. Same body fat, but 30 pounds less muscle. I had, all manner of irritable bowel syndrome and GERD and arthritis and, a litany of maladies that, ultimately I realized were a combination of overtraining, certainly a bad diet, certainly a diet that was carbocentric and very high in what we would today recognize as inflammatory foods. So whether it was sugar, whether it was refined grains in all of the pasta and all of the cereals that I ate to get 1,000 grams of carbs a day to fuel my racing.
That infamous carb loading the day before
carb
the
loading.
race.
Before the race, it was every single day.
Yeah.
In my era, if you were going to run 100 miles a week, you literally depleted your carbs every single day. And so every day, every night, you'd have to replenish several hundred grams at the minimum of carbohydrates. So that and industrial seed oils, they all kind of conspired to take me down a path of not feeling well. And so I wanted to kind of research how I could be fit and healthy at the same time, and how that might apply to the rest of the population. I had a degree in biology from Williams College. I was a pre-med student there. I had a sort of a secondary specialty in evolutionary biology. So I was able to kind of put together a template, a life way of behaviors that we could all engage in that would optimize our health, that would allow our genes to express themselves in a positive way in terms of building muscle, in terms of building burning fat, in improving the immune system, resistance to sunburn, all these different things that we could do, whether it was sun exposure, sleep, play, weightlifting. Certainly 40% of it was diet back in the early days of my area of concentration and expertise. And I felt like it was the diet part that most people got wrong. And so if they could dial that in, the other elements could fall into place. So that was kind of my main focus, was uncovering these hidden genetic switches that we all have, and writing about the science behind them, and then educating people on how, if they wanted to make those decisions, those choices, they could access that template, that way of living, that way of eating, that way of moving, and move toward ideal body composition, getting rid of type 2 diabetes, getting rid of lingering pain, increasing mobility, all of the things that we want. So that was really the 20 years of focus that brought me to creating ultimately Primal Kitchen, which I only started in 2014, and we launched our first product in 2015. And it became a big success story in the better for you food movement. And then I sold it in 2019.
Yeah, what's amazing about the sale of it is that it's held its integrity, it seems like, because you sold it to
I sold it to Big Food. I sold it to Kraft Heinz. Yeah.
I remember at the time thinking, "Oh no, it's gone," but it hasn't been gone.
No, not at all. And in fact, I think what people don't understand about Big Food is it's not these ogre-like people who are rubbing their hands together, going, "How can we?" Yeah, exactly.
How can we?
How can we make $1 million? Not million, billion.
Yeah, exactly.
But what these companies are, none of them, General Mills, General Foods, Kellogg's, Post, Hershey's,
Nestle.
Mondelez, Nestle, Kraft Heinz, they're not brands anymore. They are portfolios of many brands. And in the case of Kraft Heinz, they own at least 50 brands. Oscar Mayer Wiener, Oreo potatoes, Planters peanuts, Kool-Aid, Jell-O, Crystal Light, Tang. I could go on and on. And none of these companies, none of these brands have any relationship to each other, right? They're not like there's not like one corporate DNA that passes down to each of these 50 different companies that says, okay, we must do this. We must align ourselves with a better way of eating. So when they purchased Primal Kitchen, it was with I think in somewhat their naivete, but certainly they had the best intentions of like, oh my God, this is a company that's leading the movement in better for you food. We certainly want to buy them and grow them and learn from them. We are buying them because of what they've done and how they've done it. And I mean, Lord knows they don't want to change it. They did not want to change it. And so from day one, and it's been 5.5 years now, from day one, they were like, what can we do to assist you and your team to keep doing what you're doing and making it better and increasing access across the country to areas that have not had access to this type of food before. So they didn't make us do anything with our team. They didn't have us fire anybody. They didn't make us do anything with our manufacturing processes. They didn't have any input into ingredients. I mean, they know very little about ingredients at the top. The people who put the deal together to buy us have no idea about food. And I don't mean that in a bad way. They run a company and it's not their thing.
Yeah.
So you can't, in some regards, you can't really blame them. It was originally acquired by, even though it's a publicly traded company, it was acquired by 3G, which is a private equity group out of Brazil. They have since divested themselves. And Berkshire Hathaway, Warren Buffett's company. These were seen as it was a great investment in food, which looked like a good idea at the time. So they haven't done anything to, other than provide us more resources to continue to do what we were doing.
Yeah.
And I'm very thankful for that. And I think they've done a great job with it. So it was the best possible thing that could have happened to Primal Kitchen, because there was a time when I sold it, we had not yet made any money. I had poured my life savings into it. I'd racked up another mortgage on my house. I had
That's
been the
amazing,
personal guarantor on almost $10 million worth of a line of credit.
Yeah.
And I was kind of over that. And there was a point at which I couldn't scale that any further without a massive investment somewhere from someone. So it turned out to be a great thing.
Yeah. No, I mean, that's a really great story in a way, because particularly in this sector of the world, this whole health movement, whatever we want to call it, the point of view is that big food, big pharma, all these guys are out to get you. And it's a little bit refreshing to hear a different perspective, right? So
yeah. Now I'll rail on big pharma all day long, but
oh yeah, no, I mean they're I'm
I'm
not giving up on the big pharma story.
Yeah. No. I will. They're not the same way. But what they are, in many cases, is they're people who are so far removed at the highest level, the C-suite, so far removed from reality, the day-to-day workings of the average person and what their needs and requirements are. And really all they're beholden to are shareholders.
Yeah.
And when that's the driving force, things can get pretty wonky pretty quickly. And that's what's gone on with big pharma, I'm sure. And with big food, it's similar. They're not trying to poison people as much as they are unwilling to take a step in the direction of fixing things. And what I mean by that is they'll still make crunchy, salty, fatty, sweet, new things because the public is there to buy them.
Yep.
So it's your job and my job to educate the public in not only the dangers of many of the ingredients that they're putting in here, but also the availability of certain foods like Primal Kitchen sauces and dressings and toppings and things like that. So there you have it. So that's what happened. So now we come to, because this is a long-winded response to your question,
that's all right.
But you set it up with how did you get here?
I set it up. I pitched the ball. I'm watching it sail.
So in 2019, after I sold Primal Kitchen, I had now a sizable amount of resources and time on my hands. And I just said, I'm going to really rededicate myself to this problem that has plagued me, this issue that has plagued me for the last 40 years. And that is, I hate shoes. I hate shoes. I never liked the running shoes. I never liked street shoes. I never liked fashion wear. I always felt uncomfortable wearing shoes. I was always much much happier, literally happier going barefoot whenever I could.
Yeah.
And I was an early adopter of the minimalist footwear that came out initially in the 2007 era. The original 5-toed shoes, I had 20 of them in my closet. I loved them. I thought they were great, but I had problems with the evolution of that line of product.
Yeah.
And so over the years, I became a little bit disillusioned at their unwillingness to keep up with what I thought was a huge potential trend, which was this recognition that foot health is essential to overall health, and that our connection with the earth it's the way we communicate with the environment around us. We communicate through our feet. There's no other thing contacting the ground but our feet.
Yeah.
And when we're barefoot, it's beautiful. I mean, how can you be outside barefoot in the grass and not immediately have a smile on your face?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
right?
100%.
And yet you walk outside barefoot on concrete, not so much, or on glass or a gravelly
or gravel.
A gravel, no. Not so much. And then you walk in grass on thick cushioned shoes, it's like your senses have been dulled. So we have this connection with earth, and it requires ground feel, which is the ability of the feet, the bottoms of the feet, which have 200,000 nerve endings, to be able to sense everything about that surface, temperature, texture, tilt, whether there's a crack in the road, or the road is, or the ground, or the surface is tilted, or whether there's a rock you're stepping on, or a stick, or a pothole. And by the time you weight the foot that you're stepping on, if you're barefoot, by the time you plant that foot, the brain has all the information it needs to orchestrate the entire kinetic chain from the bottom of the feet up through the neck. Mm-hmm. And this is really a critical concept for people to grasp, I think. Everybody is born with a perfect kinetic chain. Birth defects aside, everybody is born with a perfect kinetic chain. That kinetic chain, which is the orchestration of the muscles and the joints to move through space, and it requires the sensory input from the feet, and the organization of the brain. And the brain needs to get the information through that sensory input, in which case it knows the brain can tell the body exactly how to scrunch the arch, how to flex the toes, how to roll the ankle in or out, how to bend the knee, how to tilt the hip, and how to make that stride and that gait, and unload the burden, to take to bear the weight, to bear the G-forces, the stresses of that step, or that running stride, or that sprinting stride, or that jump, in a way that utilizes the individual's own biomechanics best. Mm-hmm. Now, why that's important, when I say everybody has a perfect kinetic chain, some people are flat-footed, some people pronate, some people supinate, some people have knock knees, bow legs, they're duck-footed, they're wide-hipped, they're narrow-hipped, one leg's longer than the other. It doesn't matter much, because if the brain has the information that it requires to make that stride perfectly, the brain will organize all of those individual, unique component parts that you have into a perfect gait. And it will, over a lifetime, it'll be self-balancing. It'll be it will not be limited by the damage of overuse or injury, or once compensatory damage, where one group of muscles is overcoming a defect in another group because you've lost that sensory input. Yeah. So when we're barefoot, all of this stuff works beautifully, which is why most indigenous populations that go barefoot, or at least are minimally shod, don't have foot problems. They don't have knee problems. They don't have lower back problems.
They don't get plantar fasciitis.
They don't get bunions. They don't get plantar fasciitis. Yeah, because they have that ground feel, and that's the word that we talk about in footwear, the ground feel. Now, when you have the ground feel, you still have to be able to articulate the toes. You have to be able to utilize the small muscles of the feet in the way that they were designed. So what that means to me is that there are a number of companies that make what we would call minimalist shoes, wide toe box shoes, where it's one toe box, it's wide, it's sold as a minimalist shoe. That's great. It has ground feel. A lot of them have ground feel, so you can feel the pebbles you step on, and the twigs that you step on, or the ribbing on a manhole cover. Yep. All those things are great. But if you can't individually allow the toes to conform to that surface that you're walking on, and let the big toe abduct to pull away from the rest of the foot and become the primary driver that it wants to be, then you haven't really optimized your footfall. You haven't really optimized your stride. So the biggest challenge for me was I wanted to redesign footwear from the ground up, utilizing ground feel as a primary driver, but also it had to be a 5-toed shoe. It had to be a shoe that allowed the toes to do what they want to do, what they're supposed to do, which is articulate individually, pull away from the rest of the foot if they need to. The foot should be almost considered a tripod, with the heel as one of the legs of a tripod, the little toe as another leg, and the big toe, which abducts outward, as the third leg of that tripod.
Yeah.
So my son and I set out about 2.5-3 years ago to develop this new line of footwear that would allow and enable the foot to do what it wants to do. So ground feel, toe articulation, and toe splay. So the splay is sort of forced upon you because you have to put your toes into these individual toe boxes.
Yeah.
But as you
practice,
it takes a little practice. It's one of the most frustrating initial responses that we get. But as you have confirmed, and we're now tens of thousands of customers, and we hear from a lot of people. Once I got the toes in and I walked around the first day, it was easier the second day. It was really easy the third day, and by the fourth or fifth day, they just slide right on. And there's no thought given to, oh my God, are my toes all in?
Yeah.
Is my little toe still stuck?
Well, the little toe is the one that, it's the only one that I actually have to think about a little bit.
Yeah.
But honestly, I think what it brings you back to is that your toes have function. They're not just there for decoration. No. They're not there for nail polish. They're not there as an afterthought or as I don't know how to finish the foot, I guess I'll throw some toes on there. They actually have a purpose. And we completely, to your point, we disable them by sticking them all together in one box.
Yeah.
It's like if you wore mittens your whole life, like you just wouldn't be able to function.
Right. Or, at least a mitten has a thumb part to it. If you just taped your hand together and said, okay, I'm going to play the piano with my hands taped together, and I'm going to make dinner with my hands taped together, and I'm going to, do handstands with it wouldn't work.
Yeah.
And the hands and the feet are very, very connected. I mean, if you've ever seen some of the videos of people who are born with no arms, very dexterous with their toes and their feet, and can do things that people normally do with their hands without thinking. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it's been an overlooked part of fashion. It's been an overlooked part of modern life, and it's kind of weird. It's one of these things that goes back several hundred years to where, if you go back again a few hundred years ago, the peasants had wide feet and wide shoes, and the royalty, which didn't have to do much in the way of walking or working or standing all day, kept trying to narrow the foot down and have a pointy shoe. And some of these things are ridiculous that you look from the 16th century and the 17th century. But how that became evolved into modern footwear with all of the things that fashion editors love to rave about in shoes just boggles my mind, because at the end of the day, it is one of the most important organs that we have. And then we embrace it, and we brace it, and we encase it, and scrunch the toes together, and then we cut off all of the input, the sensory input that it requires for us to move through this world effortlessly and with grace.
Yeah.
And this big toe, which is being forced against the rest of the other toes, is a real issue for a lot of people. Mm-hmm. One of the leading podiatrists in the space did a video about a year ago now, which really looks at, for instance, plantar fasciitis and says, look, so many people have plantar fasciitis, particularly runners. Why do they have plantar fasciitis? It's what is it about running that does that? Well, it's not the running. It's, in many cases, the theory is it's the shoes. It's the shoes because the plantar fascia, that part of that structure of the foot that runs down the arch and out from the heel to the big toe, it needs circulation. It requires blood circulation to do what it's supposed to do. And if you scrunch the big toe over toward the other toes and then lift it up a little bit, which is what most running shoes do, most athletic shoes do, you scrunch it and lift it up, you get that, it's called a rocker. You cut off the circulation to the plantar fascia area. And then it's no wonder that tissue literally dies. It should be called a plantar fasciosis, which is more a death of a tissue than plantar fasciitis, which is simply the inflammation. Yeah. So by abducting the toe, by pulling the toe away from the other toes, you can increase the circulation in that area. Now, I'm not allowed to say that, we can give a medical claim of any kind that, wearing our shoes fixes plantar fasciitis, but that's the sort of theory that if you allow the foot to do what it's supposed to do, and allow the circulation to flow freely, allow the small muscles of the feet to do what they're supposed to do. When people wear orthotics, which is one of the things I used to wear, and they think, I can't, Mark, I can't wear your shoes because I need orthotics. I'm like, you need orthotics because you don't do any work on your arch. And the reason your arch is suffering, the reason that you think you have, fallen arches or flat feet, is because you haven't worked your arch. You haven't spent enough time barefoot. You haven't spent enough time outside in the grass or even in your house walking up and down stairs barefoot. These are all things that the feet require, and you can build back your arches quite beautifully and fairly quickly.
Well, how many muscles are there in the foot? I know there's like a couple hundred bones, but how many muscles?
It's 26. Yeah, 26 bones, 33 joints. Literally, so many muscles and tendons that it's I forget, it's 50 something, I guess, per foot. But it's an amazing number of, again, it's this orchestration of all of these things working together that allows the foot to have such great dexterity and mobility, and then you enclose it, encase it in,
it atrophies.
And it atrophies. And so when you talk again about people who are, I really would love to be wearing your shoes, Mark, but I need my arch supports, or I need my orthotics. I'm like, well, start by just walking a little bit in these shoes around the house, and then when you take the dog out for a walk, just walk in these, and very quickly you'll see that you made a comment that your toes hurt a little bit after the first couple of times at the beginning. And many people say, well, my toes feel tired, or they're a little achy after the first time I wear them. And that's because you haven't used your toes for so long. It's like you say, I go to the gym, I haven't trained for 10 years, and now I hire a trainer. And the first day I go to the gym, the trainer puts me through a workout and I ache the next day. Okay, that's a good sign. That's what you wanted to have happen. Yes.
Yeah.
So this is what we're trying to do. We're trying to get people to understand that you can reclaim foot health naturally. You don't in so many cases you don't need the surgery. You don't need the devices. And the orthotics. Yes, some people do, and I talk to podiatrists all the time who say, look, your shoe is great, Mark, and I've got this customer who just needs to transition. Or she just needs to spend some time, back and forth, a little barefoot time, a little time working with toe spacers. And then I think that, the Peluva would be great for them.
Yeah.
And we tell people don't run in these shoes. Now, if you know how to run, they're an amazing running shoe, but almost all people don't know how to run. The idea behind running is you should land on your forefoot. Heel striking is not a way to run. Heel striking is it's another artifact of the big shoe industry over the past 50 years that made cushioned shoes that encourage people with bad running form basically to heel strike.
Yeah.
And over years or decades of running, this inappropriate running pattern, which was made doable only because of the thickness and the cushioning of the shoes, did not decrease running injuries. People still get the same amount of running injuries that they've always gotten. There's no decrease in running injuries as a result of shoe technology. It's just over the years, somebody will say, well, my feet are kind of destroyed from all the running I've done, and I've been running in thick shoes. Do you have any shoes that are thicker and even more cushioned? And that's the fix. And that's really what got us to these really thick. I mean, like perversely thick shoes now that you see in running shoe stores.
Yeah. Well, you're ending up on these pillows, right? Which
Yeah.
fundamentally disables the foot. I mean, I think that this type of shoe, like you could put it on any, like little kids. I don't know how you don't make them for kids yet, but you
No,
can
it's
imagine
so tough
because
to
you can
get those
never
little
get their little
toes.
toes in. I know.
So that's the
It'd be
problem.
so hard to get their little
But I
tiny
but I would
toes.
tell parents, here's the thing.
Leave them
Um,
barefoot.
keep them barefoot, and because have them buy other minimalist footwear that has wide toe boxes, because their feet have not been so compromised. Look, the wide toe box shoes, again, they're great,
Hmm.
but somebody who spent 15 or 35 years wearing regular shoes and whose feet are malformed,
Yeah.
your foot is not going to automatically seek some natural, comfortable
Yeah.
splay in a wide toe box.
Hmm.
This is why 20 million pairs of toe spacers have been sold in the past couple of years, right? People understand that their feet are messed up and they've got to do something about it.
So,
Well,
so yeah. So the whole issue of bunions, like, do you think that's basically an artifact of just wearing of pushing that big toe, and those
I really
people would
do. I
just
really
end up
do.
having a more splayed foot if they were allowed?
Very few people have, genetic bunions that would happen as a result of whether or not they wore restrictive shoes.
Yeah.
My guess is 95% of bunion issues are caused by the shoes that people are wearing, the narrow restrictive shoes that forces the big toe over. And if you force that big toe over and bend it sideways, over time, those bones, they have to adapt to that
Yeah.
position. And look, the body does all sorts of things to adapt.
Hmm. Hmm.
And many of these things the body does don't make any sense. But it's the body's way of saying, look, if you're gonna do this to me, if you're gonna really cramp my style, if you're gonna restrict my movement in this particular plane of motion, I gotta compensate some way,
Yeah.
and that's what I'm gonna do. Type 2 diabetes is a compensation. The body's adapting to too much sugar and trying to get rid of it.
Hmm.
Gaining weight is body's adaptation to too much insulin and too many calories, too much energy coming in. So the body gains weight. These are all adaptations that the body does. It's programmed to do that.
Hmm.
It's not necessarily a good thing, but if you don't understand the behaviors that you're engaging in and what the ramifications are, you assume, oh my God, my bunions are just like my mother had them and my grandmother had them. Well, your mother had tight shoes and she put you in cute little
Adorable shoes. Yeah.
adorable shoes when you were 5 and sent you to tap class and,
Yeah.
all of that. So kids, if kids spend a lot of time barefoot and then wear wide toe box shoes because they haven't gone through the process of disfiguring their feet,
Hmm.
I'm sure they'll be fine in regular wide toe box shoes.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, I was put as a little kid, a tiny kid, I was put into these orthopedic shoes because I had flat feet.
Mm.
And, I, being the age that I am, I got into, then I was a classical ballet dancer, which I think I didn't do a lot of toe work. So my foot was quite strong. But when I got into teaching aerobics, when aerobics first hit the landscape, I ended up, in a in a chair with a whatchamacallit, a physiotherapist going,
Yeah.
only old people get this plantar fasciitis thing. Like it's coming. And we were teaching on concrete floors with,
Yeah, in Reeboks,
in Reeboks.
in the red
Exactly.
Reeboks with the Velcro strap,
Yeah,
as
exactly.
Akon says,
And the
in
leg warmers.
apple bottom jeans. Yeah,
Yeah, no, it was bad. The whole thing was just bad.
yeah.
But and so which led to a lifetime of wearing orthotics and twisting ankles, because then I taught step classes and my proprioception was completely off. And so, you would, it was and so when I got these shoes, and I've tried other barefoot shoes before and never liked them. Like I ended
Mm-hmm.
up, in some ways I would end up with an Achilles that was strained, or something would go off. I've given away a whole bunch of them lately.
Mm-hmm.
So when I got these, I was pretty skeptical. But there's, the amount of thought that you've put into this and the way you've built the sole.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't had a single foot pain, and it's been 2 months, and I've
That's
barely
great.
taken them off. It's
No, that's
kind of-
great.
It's pretty. I'm shocked. I didn't expect I was thinking, oh my God, they sent me these shoes. They're really, like, what am I going to
Yeah.
do? How am I going to
Yeah.
tell them? And
Yeah.
I'm blown away. And
Great.
so now I'm trying to figure out, like, how am I going to get everybody else to wear them?
Yeah. Well, this is my lot in life. How am I going to get everybody else to wear them?
Yeah.
They're again. We said don't run in these shoes, and I got off on a tangent
Oh,
about
yeah.
running and all of that. But if you know how to run, these are great for running. But they're really good. I mean, what we tell people is walk in these, and when you
Yeah.
walk in these shoes, and especially when you walk on uneven surfaces, and you feel the ground underneath, every step you take is strengthening your foot without the dynamic, ballistic G-forces and torque and all of the stuff that you would get if you were running,
Yeah.
or if you were doing any other activity, playing jumping sports or something like that. So, like, I walk anywhere from 6 to 12 miles a day. I usually go to Europe in the summer. We'll go this summer for 2 months, and I'll put in untold numbers of miles, a lot of miles, and every step I take, I feel I'm actually in tune with the surface I'm walking on, whether it's pavement and I'm literally feeling the crack in a sidewalk,
Yeah.
or whether it's I'm on a very rough cobblestone, which my wife and I call foot candy. It's so cool to walk on
Like
cobblestones.
a foot massage. Yeah.
It's like a foot massage.
Yeah.
I've got a video. I should put it up at some point of me. There was a day I was in Hawaii a couple of months ago, and it was a day off of working out, and I didn't want to not do anything. So I put on my Peluvas and I went for a walk on the cooled lava fields for 45 minutes. And every step I took, my foot landed in a different orientation. It could have been down 45 degrees, rotated out 30 degrees. And because these shoes have great traction, I wasn't worried about slipping or anything like that. But every step, I literally can feel the integration of my entire kinetic chain, again, from the bottom of the foot, because I'm even feeling little bits and pieces of the lava. And again, I know you felt this. It's a good feeling when you feel stuff underneath your foot.
Yeah.
And especially because of the amount of, we put like 5 millimeters of what we call low durometer EVA cushioning, which is just enough to allow you to walk long distance on pavement. And what the feeling we sort of, the analogy we give is it's like walking barefoot on a putting green, right?
Yeah.
That's the kind of
That's
kind
what
of surface.
it feels like.
Yeah. And then walking again on, but we seek out uneven surfaces. I hike some gnarly rock strewn hikes, and and I will break into a run every once in a while because I'm an ex-runner, and you come back from these I wouldn't call them workouts, but these walks or these hikes or whatever, and really feel like you've done your feet a service. Like every time I get back from one of those things, I literally feel like, okay, I've reconnected with the ground. I've recentered my kinetic chain. I've, there are no hip problems, knee problems, none of the things that I used to have running metronomically down the road in cushioned shoes.
Yeah. Yeah. I actually think, maybe one of the ways to convince people to transition over is just to convince them to wear them at home around the house. Because I think what'll happen is, for many people, they'll like them so much. That's what happened to me.
Yeah.
I didn't want to take them off.
Yeah.
And then I started walking. And to your point about running, I think that if you wear them enough and help the foot to re-strengthen and regain its mobility and reconnect with your brain and the rest of the kinetic chain, you will be able to run in them eventually. It just might take a little while for the average person.
Yeah, for sure. And again, you can't. The limiting factor is this heel striking. You can't even in these shoes. You can't heel strike. It's just
it would hurt.
It would hurt. It hurts to heel strike in these shoes because it should hurt to heel strike because you should not be running. Most people should not be running with a heel strike.
No. Well, if you think about it, the heel doesn't have any way to give. The front of the foot can spread out and absorb the shock
when you're running. Yeah.
When you're
now,
running.
Obviously, when you walk, that's a heel landing. The heel. So my new book coming out in September is called Born to Walk.
Oh, nice.
And it's really going to look at, first of all, what a cluster the running boom was over the last 40 years, how it was inappropriate for most people to even take up running in the first place. Probably only 1% of the population should be running at all.
Oh,
Most
yeah.
people should be walking so walking and sprinting, right? And we humans are designed to walk and sprint. We're not designed to run. Now, and of course, this is sort of a spin on the original book Born to Run, which came out in 2010. I don't know if you read that book.
I've heard of it, but I never read it.
It was a big, huge bestseller. And Chris McDougall, the author, is a friend of mine. And this is not to take him down at all. This is just to say, I don't think we were born to run. I think we were born to walk, and we were born to sprint. And the fact that we can run 5 or 6 miles, that's nice. And let's do it once in a while. But to run every day, this what we call steady state cardio, which now, if you're following any of the anti-aging longevity movement, steady state cardio has lost its luster. It's now
catabolic, if nothing else, right?
It's bingo. That's the word. It's catabolic. So as you get older, the amount of time you spend lifting is golden time, and the amount of time you spend building muscle mass and maintaining muscle mass. And by the way, that's all cardio too. When you lift, it's cardio. It's a form of cardio.
For sure. Yeah. When I work on the leg press machine, I come off after 2 minutes and I'm huffing and puffing.
It's amazing, right? I'm out of breath.
Oxygen debt here.
Yes. No. I do leg days, once in a while, and I'll do deadlifts. And if I do, and I can't do single rep anymore, I don't want to push that envelope. So I do sometimes 15 or 20 repetitions of a fairly heavy weight. And I finish that and I'm out of breath for as if I just run a quarter mile around the track as hard as I could.
Yeah.
So that's all cardio. That all works the heart. By the way, sauna is cardio to a certain extent. Sauna elevates the heart rate without the pounding. So you don't need to go out and people have assumed over the years, well, running is the gold standard of cardio. Not really. I mean, running is, as you said, and appropriately, it's catabolic. Yeah. It's not. So the fact that we can run doesn't mean we should run every single day. And so people say, well, Mark, I want to run. I'm like, okay, well, what does that mean you want to run? You want to run every day because why? You think it's good? Because I'll let you run. If you want to run once a week, 5 miles, and all the other stuff you do in your life is training for that, to be able to run, whether it's lifting, walking a lot, sprinting a little bit, doing some high intensity stuff here and there, you will be able to run your 5 miles. And the irony of ironies is you'll probably be able to run the 5 miles at the same pace you trained at every day for the last 15 years, except you're not beating yourself up and you're not going catabolic and you're not taking away from the time. Look, every time you run or do some steady state cardio, you take away from the ability to build muscle in the gym for 12 or 24 hours because it's a different cardio sends a different steady state cardio, aerobic activity, high level aerobic activity sends a different set of signals to the body, to the genes, than heavy lifting does. And you need both of them, but you get more bang for the buck out of heavy lifting because you get the benefits of the muscle hypertrophy, strength, power, growth. And you also get some of the benefits of the cardio because the heart had to work harder to do that. So in many cases, running is kind of a waste of time. And people are going to be pissed off. I don't care because I was a career runner. Yeah. And, I haven't run a mile in 30 years. And here's something that I just got my VO2 max tested. When I was an elite runner, I had my VO2 max tested when I was 27 years old. I tested not in the top 1%, but in the top 5%. I was not I didn't have an exceptional VO2 max. Yeah. I just was willing to beat the crap out of myself. And I ran at such a high level, a high percentage of my VO2 max that when it came to the marathon, like I could not have competed in the 5,000 or 10,000 very well. But the longer the race was, my willingness to compete, to race, to spend a lot of time at a high percentage of my VO2 max benefited me.
Yeah, you're willing to suffer.
I was willing to suffer. So when I don't know how much you know about VO2 max, but it's the new metric for longevity.
For longevity, for sure.
So when I was 28 years old and I had my VO2 max tested as a marathoner, as an elite marathoner, I was in the top 5%. I just had my VO2 max tested. I haven't run, again, a mile in 30 years. I do 1 or 2 workouts a week on a bike where I'm on the sand, riding a fat bike on the sand. I lift. I do stand-up paddling. I play a lot. I'm in the top 5% of VO2 max for my age.
Still.
Same thing. So I'm still like, it's not like I would have improved. Nobody improves their VO2 max over a lifetime, but I'm still in the top 5%.
Which is an improvement compared to everybody else.
And I weigh 30 pounds more. And if you know that VO2 max is a factor, it's the absolute volume of oxygen you put through divided by your weight in kilograms.
Yeah.
So I weigh 15 kilograms more now than when I was a runner. So anyway. What's the point? The point is, I haven't
is the point.
You don't need to. You don't need to run. You don't need to do all of that steady state cardio. There's lots of things you can do to raise VO2 max. Yeah, you got to do some interval training. I mean, I do rope pulls, as an interval once every 2 weeks or something like that. I do some hard stuff, maybe a salt bike, but the end result is all of this comes from short bursts of very kind of focused time. No more am I doing hours and hours of steady state cardio because it's catabolic, as you say. By the way, that's the reason. Again, I weigh 172 now, and I raced at 142 pounds. And at 142 pounds, I was a big marathoner at 5'10". So there were guys, I should have weighed 135 or 134 to be, lighter and whatever. But I lifted weights, right? I knew early on that I wanted to lift weights to at least have some form of upper body. But because I was running so much, I couldn't keep any muscle on. So when I stopped running is when I started putting on muscle mass because I was lifting the same, but I wasn't catabolic. I wasn't tearing it up.
Well, also your testosterone probably went up a bit just from not.
Yeah, so it went up, and truth be told, for the last 10 years, I have been doing TRT. I supplement with testosterone. That is one of the things I do.
That's
but
okay.
Again, it works. Muscle mass is my big thing. I want to maintain it.
Yeah.
I'm what they call a hard gainer. If I didn't lift, I would probably weigh 142 pounds.
For sure. No, I mean, listen, I think like you, I think that muscle is who is it that says this? I think it's Gabrielle Lyons who says muscle is the currency of longevity. Yeah. And we need it for metabolic flexibility. We need it for function and to hold it together.
I mean, one of the things that I started talking about 20 years ago, and I don't see many people talking about it, even though I know they understand it. But I want to, one of my goals is to be able to translate complex scientific issues into easy to digest language for the layperson. When you have muscle mass, it's the muscle mass that drives all the other organs to have to need to keep up with the muscle mass. When you, for instance, when you lift weights, your heart has to pump harder. Your liver has to work to process not just metabolites but excess fuel. The lungs, you have to breathe in more when you get out of breath doing your leg days or any interval activity. When you lift heavy weights, your bones have to get stronger. They have to get denser, which is why weight-bearing activity is the number one cure for bone density issues for most women. Well, when you focus on muscle and you realize that what we call organ reserve, the ability of an organ to keep up with the body, when the organ reserve has to keep pace with the muscle that you're putting on, the reason you live longer is if you look at the opposite effect of that. Let's just say you're 75, you say, I'm over, I stopped, I don't train anymore, I don't feel like it, my bones hurt, whatever. And you stop training, so you lose muscle mass. And now because you lose muscle mass, you can't train because it's difficult to do movement, particularly hard movement, when you don't have much muscle. So you sit on the sofa. So the heart goes, I don't need to do much. There's no call to increase output at all. The lungs go, whatever. I can, this guy's going to sit on the couch. This girl's going to sit on the couch all day long. I don't need to be inspiring that much. The liver says the same thing, and the bones go, hey, there's no need for structure now. We're not lifting heavy things in the gym, so the body doesn't want to keep anything that it doesn't need. Right? The body is inherently lazy. Not lazy is sort of a wrong term. It's an anthropomorphic term. It's a judgmental term. I'm sorry.
It's a bit judgy. You know how you know what I say? I say that muscle is expensive to the body, right?
Yeah.
It's expensive tissue. And so the body's not going to keep it around if you don't give it a reason to keep it around.
Correct.
And what you're saying is once it's dumped the muscle, everything else just kind of downgrades because they don't need to keep up.
Correct. There's no need to keep up. It's a conservation. It's a survival mechanism from from hundreds of millions of years of evolution, not just humans. And so what happens is now you're 82 years old and you get up in the middle of the night to pee because your bladder is weak and you don't have and you're slightly incontinent. I don't want to paint too dire a picture here, but and you trip on the cat on the way to the bathroom and you fall on the carpet and break your hip. And you break your hip because the bones have become brittle because there's no reason for the bones to stay strong. So now you break your hip. Now you wind up in the hospital.
Yeah. Also, you were wearing slippers, so you couldn't feel the floor properly.
Yeah. And you, right. And because you didn't have proper balance and proprioception. So even if you are barefoot because you didn't work on proprioception and balance and strength, maybe you could have caught yourself if you'd had, so anyway, you break a hip, you wind up in the hospital. Now you get the obligatory pneumonia once you're in the hospital because you're confined to a bed. Now your lungs start to fill with fluid, but because they're so weak, you can't expectorate. You can't get rid of the fluid, and your heart starts to back up and become congested. And now you die of congestive heart failure or kidney failure or some other. You die of the failure of the weakest organ that could not keep up because you gave up on moving and gave up on maintaining muscle mass.
Yeah, no, 100%. I mean, and I think that's it. It paints a bleak picture, but it's avoidable.
No, it's fixable. I mean, it's not just avoidable. I mean, I think if you're 70 years old now, you can still there's still time to.
Start at 70. Who was it?
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, there's some woman just set a new record in the pool. I think she's 90 something years old. She started swimming at 60.
Yeah.
Right. So it's literally never too late. I mean, you may not become a competitive swimmer, but bottom line, it's never too late. And one of the things that always struck me is I heard someone describing the symptoms of old age. The physical symptoms of old age are, if you really look at them, it's the symptoms of someone who's completely out of shape.
Yeah.
Like they've lost their conditioning. They've lost their ability to stand up. And so the posture goes and to your point, like, with the feet, like the proprioception was gone ages ago. I mean, frankly, going to the other end of the spectrum from little kids whose little toes will never get into the shoes because their feet are kind of puffy and super cute. If we move to older people, they probably are the next group to stand the most to gain from adopting a shoe like Peluva, because it might take them a while to be able to wear them a lot, but I think it would be transformative.
So my mother-in-law, who had bad feet and was having a difficult time, she won't take them off either. It's transformed her life.
Yeah.
She's 90.
Yeah.
And she's got a whole new sense of again, spatial awareness, proprioception, a little bit, more strength, more balance. She's she's my mother-in-law, so she kind of has to be my fan, but she's a huge fan. She's a huge fan of the shoes. And I have probably 15 women in my building who are friends of my wife, who are between the ages of like 55 and 70. All 15 of them wearing Peluvas to the gym every single day. A couple of them walking regularly I'm in Miami Beach, walking 6 to 10 miles a day in the Peluvas, refuse to walk in any other type of shoes because it feels so, again, they feel so connected. And every time you push off, when you feel your foot splay on a push off, and if you've never felt that before because you've been wearing, restrictive shoes, the foot is supposed to splay outward at the metatarsal head, which is the sort of a third of the way back from the toes. It's supposed to splay outward, and then the toes are supposed to splay out every time you push off on it, whether you're walking or skipping or running or jumping or whatever. It's supposed to splay outward. And if you cramp that over years and decades and tens of thousands of steps a week, it compromises the health of your foot. So once you start to feel the push off and the splay with these shoes on, it really brings a smile to your face. It's like a new kind of lease on life. And I don't know how much time you're spending outside walking in them. Are you spending
as whenever I'm outside walking,
cool.
like I'm literally now I wear any other shoe on the occasion. It would have been, you might start with these and say, okay, well, I'm going to wear these around the house. I might wear them to the gym and wear everything else. Now I've kind of flipped that story. These are my primary shoe. And every once in a while, if I'm going somewhere where really, maybe my Doc Martens are more appropriate or whatever else, I'll wear something else. But, my only worry is maybe I'll never be able to get into my heels again. But, it's a small price to pay.
No, I mean, it's kind of a good news, bad news thing. And it's not unlike when you clean up your diet, right? Yeah. You say, okay, I live my life on McDonald's and Cinnabon and Papa John's pizza and Coke. And then I started eating clean again. And I ate clean for a while, and I felt I had more energy, I had more clarity, dropped the weight, got cut up, felt physically great. All the aches and pains went away. The bad news is if I go back to eating Papa John's and not Papa John's, I'm not picking on that, but
we don't have Papa John's in Canada.
But Cinnabon, whatever, you're going to feel it. You're going to. Whereas you didn't feel it before, you never felt it until you realized you cleaned up your act. But now you go back and it's, oh my God, I can't believe I was doing this to myself. And that's the problem with the heels,
Yeah, no, the thing with the diet is you felt it, but you had normalized feeling crappy.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And you didn't know.
And you normalized feeling whatever you felt in the heels. By the way, the heels are great. I think, ladies rock the heels, and it's a great, they look fabulous. Don't stop wearing them, but just pay more attention to foot health.
Well, I mean, maybe you'll be, maybe wearing them on occasion will be less stressful on your body because ultimately everything else is going to be stronger, right?
Oh, the number of women who, again, because my wife has a lot of girlfriends and I've seen all their feet.
Yeah.
Some of the feet are shaped. They're shaped. Well, also in LA for 30 years in Malibu, their feet are shaped like a stiletto, like a pointy-toed stiletto heel. Mm-hmm. They come to a point at the front, and the bunion forms the side of the diamond that becomes
not so sexy when you take off the shoes.
No, it's not. No, it's not. It's not. No. But it's we're like our next door neighbor, who's one of my wife's best friends, and she has very bad bunions. Walks 8-9 miles a day in Peluvas, and she was she's pain-free doing that.
Yeah.
It's not going to fix the bunion. It's not going to make it, beautiful, no. but it's a totally functioning toe now again.
Yeah.
Because of forcing the toes to kind of go through a range of motion that is appropriate for the human foot, allowing the toes to splay outwardly on the push off when you walk. And she'll say she can walk. She can't walk. She walks like a minute slower per mile in the Peluvas. And it's because she's using the muscles of her feet. And so, the reason you're walking is, number one, to get out in the fresh air. Number two, to get a workout. Yeah. And so if you're using the small muscles of your feet, hey, that's a win.
It's more work.
You're not, unless you're racing for, trying to go 17-minute miles instead of 18-minute miles.
Yeah, no, exactly. And not only that, maybe, I don't know the answer to this question, but maybe she'll avoid having to have surgery someday on those bunions.
Absolutely.
And bunion surgery, can we just say?
Yeah.
Is not exactly one of the most successful surgeries on the planet.
No, it's a very low satisfaction rate.
Yeah.
Very, very low satisfaction. No, she won't need surgery on these bunions for sure. And she's in her mid 60s. So she was looking at that being a likelihood in the future. It's not going to be now.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, my son's fiance, who's on our team at Peluva, she had her first bunion surgery when she was 20.
Come on.
And she got it on one foot. She's been wearing Peluvas for the last 2 years. And she really, so what she says is her other bunion is perfectly fine. And she really regrets having had the surgery. Now her bunion foot, the one that she had surgery on, hurts.
Yeah.
That's noticeably different because of the surgery.
Yeah.
So this has been my kind of through line subtext of a lot of stuff I've said over the years, is that there's a natural way of addressing some of the issues that you have in terms of your life, in terms of your pain or your discomfort or your illnesses or disease. Much of it has to do with food. A lot of people, I would say, like when you talk about bunions, for example, I want to know like how much of that is a result of consuming wheat your whole life.
Yeah, in terms of driving inflammation.
Yes.
100%.
Yeah, I mean,
Well,
it's not directly related. It's not directly related, but
it's a compounded problem, right?
Bingo. You put all these things together, and you go, "Oh yeah, that makes total sense that you have this issue."
Yeah, no, 100%. And you've always spoken about movement, right? Like, I mean, really, truly, now people are like, "Oh yeah, there's movement and there's exercise. They're different." You've been singing that song for decades. Yeah, truthfully. Yeah, like you've been talking about movement forever.
Yeah, I mean, I think movement defines quality of life. Movement. Look, I thought about doing a treatise on this at one point about how so much of human development over the millions of years has to do with cognition, with the brain, with storytelling, and the fact we have language that allows us to describe what we've seen and pass that information along to other people. And so that's how we became separated in some regards from the rest of the animals, because we've used this brain to build tools and to tell stories. And part of storytelling is moving through the world and seeing new things and being observant. And so movement is an integral part of our storytelling, of our story as humans, of our history. And when I talk about longevity, I never talk in terms of like years. Like years don't mean anything to me without quality of life. Yeah. I mean, my 100%. First T-shirt I ever made was Grok, the spear throwing guy, and it said "Live long, drop dead." Yes. And it was the subtext to that was be as active and healthy and vibrant as you possibly can for as long as you can, and then hopefully, when it's your time, it's quick and painful and in the middle of the night or whatever, but not as a result of some 20 or 20-year chronic decline where you're hanging on and your loved ones don't want to pull the plug because your heart's still beating and all of this stuff. Yeah. So quality of life is movement and cognition, right? You have to have the both. You have to have the ability to access memories, have conversations with people, interact, tell stories, and listen to stories, and the ability to move through the world, not just for that cognition part of it, but just because when you stop moving, that is the beginning of the end. Yeah. Right? It's immobility is the beginning of a vicious downward spiral, because you can't get to the gym, because you can't walk, because you can't do the weights it's
inertia. It's a law of nature.
And it's a slippery slope and a downward spiral, which is why I tell people walking is still the best thing you can do. As long as you can walk, like you are so ahead of the rest of the population if you can walk, and get out there and walk. And that's where the movement part is like, okay, move. I don't mean, again, I never said move, like run, 30 miles a week. No, move. Don't count calories. Just move. Move through space, which is why so many Asian communities have things like Tai Chi and Qigong, where 80 and 90-year-old people are out in the parks and they're just doing these amazing, like, swooping, swinging hand movements and full body movements and twisting. Has nothing to do with burning calories. Yeah. Has everything to do with having the experience of being a grounded human being moving through time and space.
Yeah. Yeah, no, 100%. And, you know, just going back to something you said earlier in this, and I think it was before the podcast, this woman I'm going to be introducing to, the connection of the foot on the ground to the brain is for all the reasons. And the way that it informs the nervous system
Yes.
is massive and it won't do that. And I think we've been denied this proper connection forever. Those of us who wear shoes all the time and never go barefoot, like you're denied that. And you know, just as the body gets out of shape, we talked about this, the muscles in the foot will atrophy and the inflammation from the crappy diet will then take over and you're into this crazy spiral, right?
Absolutely.
So
have you had a foot massage?
Yeah, not a long time though. Foot massages are the best.
It's the best. And the reason it's the best, why is it the best? Because
oh my God. And reflexology. Oh
no,
my God.
And so I have a woman comes to our house once a week. Carrie and I each get an hour and a half reflexology. And I told Carrie, I said, like, this is my wife, if we never got a full body massage ever again and we could only get Tricia, who's our reflexologist, I would take that because it's so amazing. And I've never been into, I'm pretty much science-based as much as I can, although I don't trust science anymore these days. But reflexology has been around for a long time. And if you map the bottom of the human foot, you can, like, she'll work on my foot and it'll be tender someplace. And that's your hip, right? Yeah. How'd you know?
Yeah.
You know,
your liver.
Yeah. But back to the big toe. So the big toe is the brain connection. So the big toe is the part of the foot in reflexology that is directly connected to the brain. It's also connected to the glute, by the way. And so when you talk about like going to the gym and doing deadlifts or squats or whatever, the reason so many bodybuilders and weightlifters, serious weightlifters, do it barefoot is because they want the activation of the glute. They want the big toe to be abducting and pressing into the ground to activate the glute. And if you don't activate the glute fully when you do a squat or a lunge, what happens is the other muscles around that area are compensatory, and you get other muscles involved in a movement that should mostly be dependent on the gluteus maximus. And so then people get, sciatica, they get piriformis syndrome, they get other issues, and it's not 100% related, but it's related to the fact that because they couldn't activate the glute because they didn't have their big toe abducted while they were doing this strenuous activity, other things had to come into play.
Yeah. No, and listen, people lose their butts as they age, right?
Yeah.
They can't activate their glutes.
Yeah. I really wanted to do a study of people walking barefoot and in Peluvas mapping the brain, particularly older people, particularly sort of early onset dementia and that sort of thing, to see, God, is there some connection there that could be, at the very least, postponing
or beneficial. I mean, look at Parkinson's. One of the things that happens is they start to shuffle, right?
Yeah.
They can't pick up their feet anymore.
Yeah.
Anyway, so much to talk about, so much to look into. I think this is exciting. It's much bigger than a shoe.
Yeah.
Right? It's a lot more than just another piece of footwear. So I'm excited for you. I think it's really exciting. My biggest problem is my shoes are dirty now. I have to figure out how to clean them without wrecking them.
Well, you have the strands. What color are they?
Yeah, the strands, the white ones.
Throw them in the wash. I mean, they'll take 20 washings.
Okay, all right. Well,
throw them in the wash, warm water with detergent, and put a towel in there so they don't, get beat up, and then air dry them.
Yeah.
And they'll be as good as new.
Amazing. Well, I mean, I love them. They're going to be people around me are going to get them as presents, whether they want them or not.
Cool.
So thank you so much. This has been amazing. I thought we were going to talk about diet, but this has actually been way more. I think it's a fresher conversation.
Yeah.
The diet, we've beat the diet to death pretty much. By now, people should know you want to be metabolically flexible and eat whole foods and let the rest of it go.
Yeah.
But thank you for this. I really appreciate your time and you finally, following this thread that you've been needing to follow for so long.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me, Nat.
Where do people find all the things?
Oh, yeah. What's the name of the company?
We're supposed to tell them where to find you and all the things.
Yeah.
We even have a code for everybody, but it'll be at the beginning of the podcast and in the show notes.
Yeah. So the company is called Peluva, Peluva.
Yeah.
It's peluva.com. Peluva, by the way, PE means, in Portuguese, PE means foot, and luva, Luva, means glove. So it's foot glove in Portuguese.
Cool.
And on the Instagram, we are Wear Peluva, WEAR, Wear PELUVA, Wear Peluva. Yeah, we've got now we have an 80-page free book on it's a definitive guide to barefoot and minimalist lifestyle.
Nice.
With describes sort of what we talked about today, and then how to get there, how to reclaim foot health. I'm very proud of that book, and we give it away for free on the site.
Amazing. And it's Mark's Daily Apple is the newsletter, probably one of the longest living newsletters around, or is it now MDA? Is it Mark?
Well, that's just no, it's Mark's Daily Apple, but we just internally we refer to it as MDA.
MDA.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Mark, thank you so much for all your work and for everything you do and for taking the time today. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure. My pleasure. Thanks.